Hey, Charles from the Safe File Podcast here, and I had a thought. Considering the PS2 sold well over 150 million units in its lifetime, it would be an understatement to say that it created a lot of memories for a lot of people. Now, I've said on the podcast that the PS2 was, in my opinion, the best console of all time. So I figured with all of these classic consoles coming out, what would a PS2 classic look like for me? So here are the rules for this. Number one, it's going to be a mix of games I played and a mix of well-known PS2 games. Number two, there are some fantastic games that I never got into, and that stuff. But if they are that important to the PS2, they'll still get a spot. 3, this is based on my childhood, so it's based on my experiences, so yours may be a little different. 4, these aren't going to be full-blown reviews or anything, more just some thoughts about why I think these games would belong on a PS2 classic. And 5, where the games are placed doesn't mean anything. Number 20 means as much as number 1. We good? Let's get started. So I figured I should start with this gem. Over 17 million copies sold, this is easily the best-selling PS2 game of all time. San Andreas has seen many re-releases on many different platforms, but most of my friends who I know had PS2s had San Andreas. I still have memories of taking my little 8MB memory card, yeah, remember those, to mates' places so we could play through missions together or just mess around in this fictionalized state, which combined California and Nevada. The game takes place in the early 90s. You play as Carl Johnson, aka CJ, upon his return to his home state of San Andreas after 5 years on the East Coast in Liberty City. This game was doing some amazing things when it released in 2004. A compelling story, memorable characters, amazing gameplay, and a fuck ton of things to do, some of which haven't seen a return to the series. Even just going to clucking bell and eating till you throw up, or being so fat Carl's dialogue actually changes, just felt like nice touches and they made the game feel alive. I remember breaking into the military base for a jetpack. I remember breaking and entering into homes and stealing a bunch of shit. And of course I remember the mission breaking the bank at Caligula's. It honestly felt like a better heist mission than any of the GTA 5 heists. I loved it. Everywhere you went in this city felt different, the 3 main cities as well as the countryside, and even things like the in-depth modding for lowriders and tuner cars was just great and gave you hours of enjoyment. San Andreas not only earns a spot here, but it wouldn't be a PS2 classic without this game. And that's why it's here, in the number 1 spot. Okay, for full disclosure, I was going to put Gran Turismo 4 here because of its technical achievements. Considering it released in December of 2004 and still ran in HD on the PS2, it deserves a spot. But there is a reason Gran Turismo 3 is here instead. It was actually the first game I owned for the PS2. I remember getting it in a bundle with iToy, yeah, remember that? But look, I've loved cars since I was a kid, so this was naturally the first one that I chose to play over iToy. And I can't tell you how much 6-year-old me struggled on those license tests. It kicked the absolute shit out of me, but it was all fun. Favourite tracks were easily Smoky Mountain and Trial Mountain. I just loved all the cars I could choose from. This game started my love affair with racing games. Everything from Need for Speed to Burnout started with this one entry. Now we could reminisce more, but we still have 18 other games to get through. So let's go. This game was actually the first FPS game I really got into. In 13, you wake up after being saved by a lifeguard, but you have amnesia and people are gunning for you. You also learn the president of the US has been assassinated and that there's a whole conspiracy behind it, and that you may have even had a role in it. Honestly, this story gripped me when I was younger. It's well worth a playthrough, even if the ending was a fucking cliffhanger. The whole game is cel-shaded and presented like a comic book. It was like nothing I'd played before at the time. And even after the story was done, I still played a heaps of multiplayer against bots. Seriously, I dare anyone to 1v1 me on the bank map. I just had a blast with this game. I'd be happy if Ubisoft made a sequel that wasn't just a point-and-click adventure on phones, but maybe that's wishful thinking. End of the day, I loved this game, and I feel like it definitely deserves a spot on my PS2 classic. Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit. I couldn't decide between these two games. On one hand, Ratchet 2 is about as close to a perfect sequel as it could be, taking everything that makes the first game great and adding to that formula. This is when the series started to experiment with the idea of weapon upgrading and expanding ship combat. On the other hand, Ratchet 3 is considered to be the best in the original trilogy by most fans, and had even crazier weaponry to go with fun additions like the Quark mid-comics. As much as I love the story, I have to mention Ratchet 3's multiplayer. It may have been pretty basic, just capture some points around the map and you'll get access to vehicles and weapons to capture the enemy base with. But it was another example of Insomniac experimenting with a new idea for the series. I used to love playing these games on New Game Plus, upgrading all my weapons, learning how the Rhino would just turn enemies into ash when it was fully upgraded in the third game. Anyone who knows me can tell you this is my favourite series, and I could go on and on about the entire series for ages, but I'll just say I would happily pay for the original trilogy and the future trilogy on any future PlayStation consoles. I'll leave it at that. Now, if you had Ratchet & Clank 3 up your arsenal on the PS2 and you pressed R1, R2, L1, L2 at the menu, you got access to a demo of Sly 2, Band of Thieves. The game, as the name implies, is the second in another PlayStation exclusive series which helped give the PS2 the identity it had, even becoming an unofficial mascot alongside Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank. The Sly series is centered around the adventures of a thieving raccoon named Sly Cooper, and his best friends Bentley, the brains of the operation, and Murray, the crew's muscle. The game's plot continues off the first game and sees Sly go around the world in an effort to thwart the Claw Gang after he learns that they've stolen the clockwork parts for their own use. In all honesty, I wish I spent more time with this series, mainly because I never owned the games until the PS3 re-release. I'd be more than happy to purchase these games as well as the fourth, which I never played, on whatever the next console Sony put out. Okay, so here's the point of the video where everyone gets mad at me. Until now, I haven't played the original God of War 2, or even the third one, despite the fact it was released on two different systems. Kratos is probably my most played character in PS All-Stars Battle Royale, so I don't know, that kind of makes up for it. Kratos has become one of the most recognisable characters in gaming, and 2018's entry into the God of War series, which I actually did play this time, became one of the best games in recent years in my opinion. But his journey started in March of 2005, when the first game was released on the PS2. I think the best description I heard of the game came from Honest Trailers, I think it was, where they said God of War was the main reason your mum wouldn't let you buy a PS2, and it's pretty fucking clear to see why. The game is gory as hell, and us gamers love that shit. Long story short, 10 years before the events of the game, Kratos accidentally kills his wife and daughter, and the Oracle of the village Kratos destroys curses Kratos by bonding his dead family's ashes to his skin, which turns his skin white, and that was also the origin of his Ghost of Sparta nickname. The game serves as a redemption story after Athena gives Kratos the chance to redeem his freedom by killing Ares. Hey, you remember how I said I'd buy Sly and Ratchet on the next PlayStation? Add the God of War trilogy to that list. This game honestly deserves a spot here, just off its reputation and what it's done for the PS2 alone. Fuck yeah, Burnout 3. This was the first game I thought of when this idea popped into my head. It's up there as one of my favourites for the console. I purchased this game for $30 when a Video Easy store near me was closing down, and it was $30 well spent. Very few racing games till now give you the sort of rush or thrill Burnout 3 can give you. Criterion just got this down perfectly. When Burnout Paradise Remastered was released, I had a conversation with Jack about how much we both wanted to see Burnout 3 re-released. And even if racing isn't your thing, you can just play through Crash Mode, where all you have to do is cause as much chaos as possible. And causing hundreds and thousands of dollars in damage really gives you a satisfying feeling. Seriously, the only flaw in this game is the rubber banding, but even with that, this game is still phenomenal. And to top it off, it had one of the best soundtracks to a game I'd ever heard. The whole package is here, for what amounts to hours upon hours of fun and enjoyment. Just awesome. Here comes a game I'm sure no one else I know has played. Nonetheless, very underrated game. Known as Test Drive Eve of Destruction in the US and Driven to Destruction everywhere else, this game puts you in the seat of an up-and-coming demolition derby driver trying to work your way up the ranks to become the best driver in the country. This game accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do. It feels fun as hell just to ram into anything that's moving. Now in the game's career mode, you get rewarded more money for big hits and destroying other drivers, so believe me, you want to get aggressive. But all in all, the events are just a blast. I would have loved to see this gem of a game re-released, or even better, get a sequel, but no matter what, I can always rely on the original Driven to Destruction for a smashing good time. Okay, last racing game I promise. Need for Speed Underground 2 was the sequel to Need for Speed Underground, as the name suggests. But while that game was pretty good, the sequel turns everything up a notch and puts you in an open world. The bright neon lights shine through the night, and this game had a bunch of little touches which made it great. I remember how this game would give you tips about hidden shops to upgrade your car, and then having to go out and find them. I remember starting with a Peugeot 106 and thinking it was hot shit with a body kit and a coat of paint. Yeah, I was 7 at the time, and if I ever found myself looking at the cars I made back then, I might throw up at the sight of them. But I had a blast playing through the drift events and just generally exploring the city. This game was a product at the time. 2004 was a time when the Fast and Furious series was still all about street racing, souped up tuner cars, and this game reflects the culture of that time perfectly. You can even customize how many speakers were in the boot of your car. But I wouldn't mind playing those drag and drift races again with my mates for a bit of nostalgia. That being said, I do miss when the Need for Speed games were purely about racing and weren't trying to be action movies. But this game definitely deserves a spot on a PS2 classic. So here is a game I love. Jam Vendetta in 2003 was the first game in the series. And as someone who loved wrestling at the time and is a huge fan of rap, this was a match made in heaven. They even had a story mode that was about redemption and betrayal. I mean, yeah, it was pretty cliche at the time, but I was a kid. I didn't really care. I thought it was pretty cool. Fight for New York released the next year in 2004, and it brought back most of the characters like Method Man, Redman, and Ludacris. So, if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, this game allows you to pick from a cast of rappers and beat the absolute shit out of your opponent. I mean, you work for Kratos in the game's story mode. Yeah, Kratos. Christopher Judge, the voice of Kratos in 2018's God of War, voices D-Mob, your character's boss. But if working for Kratos wasn't enough, your antagonist does need to be equally badass. Enter motherfucking Snoop Dogg as Crow, the leader of the rival gang. Yeah, the game's plot is Kratos versus Snoop Dogg. That alone should be enough to pick up this game. But not only does it sound awesome, the gameplay was fun as hell too. It doesn't have the traditional wrestling rings of Jam Vendetta, but it does give you areas with stage hazards, the ability to use weapons from the crowd, and in return it just feels like a massive brawl. But it works well, if not better than Vendetta's environments. Not to mention this game is a blast with 4 people. Recently in a tweet, it was hinted that a sequel may be in the works, and god I hope it turns out better than Def Jam Icon. Well, you know what, let's just not acknowledge Icon as the 3rd game, and let's move on. So that ends part 1 of my list of what games would be on a PS2 classic. If a game you were hoping to see didn't make it in this video, it may appear in part 2, so stay tuned and I'll see you there.